Hello everyone and welcome to this demo on adaptive card extensions, in particular the office locations adaptive card extension. Right, my name is Anoop Tatti. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a developer at a company called Content+Cloud in London, United Kingdom. I write blogs on a platform called Medium under the username Anoop T. I'm on Twitter under the username Anoop Tells, and my GitHub username is Anoop T. You can follow me on those platforms if needed. Okay, let's start with the demo. Viva Connections and ACE. Oh, not that ACE, Anoop. It's not tennis season yet. We will get there soon, but let's go to the actual demo. Right. So here I am in my dev tenant in the home site in the dashboard page. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and edit this dashboard and add the card, which is called as office locations. And if I just go to edit the properties, I'll set it to large, and then it says there is some setup that is needed in order for the adaptive card to render. So let's start adding those values. So so card title, we're fine with that. Card icon, we'll leave it empty. And then the image to show on the card, I'll just pick a random image from the web. And we'll see that soon. And then there is a property to say show quick view as list. We'll set that to no. And then the next thing it asks is the data source. So basically, this adaptive card extension shows all the different offices that are present in our tenant or in our company. So these offices might be stored in different places. So that's what we are looking at here. So it is asking where are the offices stored. So let's pick the data source as local. So once we pick that, it says we need to manage the data for offices. So we are using here a nice PnP reusable control. So it asks the details for the office. So here we are saying that we are going to provide the data locally. So let me give these details that I have copied across. So firstly, we'll give the name of the office, which is London office, and then we'll give an address, and then it asks for the latitude and longitude. So I've copied these values. I'm just pasting them over here. And longitude map image link, we'll leave that as is for now. I'll explain the details in a minute soon. Then it asks for the time zone. We'll set the time zone as Europe/London, and then we'll give it the URL of a page, an internet page related to this office. And finally, we'll say who the manager of this office is, and it's our favorite user, Megan Bowen. And we save that. So if there are more offices, we can, go ahead and add other offices needed. But for this demo, I'll just say there's only one office. And once we do that, you can see that over here, it says that we've got one office. And then let's quickly go through the other properties. It says whether to show search box or not. We'll say that yes. Then there are some properties related to maps. It asks whether we have to show maps in the quick view. We'll say that to yes. And then it asks for the map source. We'll choose Bing. And then it asks whether we have to use the Maps API. We say yes to that, and then provide the API key. And then some other properties like whether it has to show the local time, we say yes. And then what API should it use to show the local time? There are a couple of APIs, Temporal and Luxon. We will have a look at these in a minute. And then it says whether to show local weather, yes or no. We set that to yes. Should it get weather from list or use weather API? We say it has to use weather API. And then we provide the open weather map API key. Right. Okay. Sorry, there are a lot of properties, but these all make sense in a minute. So once the properties are set, now if I just save that as draft, and then when it says we have one office, we click on view details, it shows the details of that office. So basically it says the London office, the time in London office is 1522, which is the same time zone as the current user, which is myself, and then the address, and then the map itself of the office, and then the weather in London, which is very nice today, 21 degrees and sunny. And then there are some other buttons as well. Get directions. Clicking on that, it opens Bing Maps, and asks you can give a from address, and then you can take a look at the map, and then the other details like contact the manager, that opens the chat in Teams, and finally more details takes you to the internet page we set. That's fine. Now you might say, if the data source is, we don't want the data source to be local. There might be some terms in the taxonomy which have the offices defined already, and that's what I have here exactly. There is a term store called as offices, and in this I have about 6 offices over here, and then each office. So if I just click on that, has some properties, address, latitude, longitude, and the time zone, etc. Yeah, so these are all defined over here. Now what we'll do is we'll use the ID of this term set. I'll just copy that, and then go back here, and then change the data source from local to taxonomy, and then it asks for the ID of the term set. I paste that, and then you can see that there are 6 offices. Okay, and then the third option for the data source is a list as well. So if you have offices in a separate list, then you can supply that as well. Okay, so now let me just save this as draft. And then when I click on view details again, now it shows all the other offices. So you can see we've got the Bangalore office, and now the local time in Bangalore is 1954, which is 4 hours and 30 minutes ahead of us. And then, all the other offices, with their respective time and the map and weather as well. And so that's how we can see all the offices. Now, the other functionality that exists in this is the search functionality. So if you want to search for something, let's say if you want to search for the Seattle office, so if I type in settle instead of Seattle, making a spelling mistake on purpose, and then search for that, you can see that I've searched for settle, and then the return results is Seattle. So we are using something called as fuse.js, which does a fuzzy search on the text. And then the final thing I wanted to show was, before we jump into the code, was this. Here we have a property which says show maps in quick view, and then if I set that to no, and then say that again. And then when we click on view details, now you see that there are no maps in quick view. However, we've got this button called as open in maps, which is nothing but the geolocation action provided by Viva Connections. I think this is part of SPFx 1.14 or 15. I'm not sure. However, there is information on how to use this as well. So when I click on that, it doesn't work. Sorry about that. Should have tested it before letting you know, but there is a glitch. Of course, the demo gods have decided that they'll not coordinate with me, but essentially the idea was when you click on that, it should open a pop-up and then show the map. Anyway, let's have a look at the code. So what are the different features used in this case? These are not SharePoint features. These are the properties of this solution. So firstly, we have multiple data sources, as we saw, can be local or taxonomy or list. We are using PnP JS version 3 in order to get the data from taxonomy and from the list. We are using Temporal API or Luxon to get the local time. And then we are using the geolocation action type, which for some reason is not working currently. And then finally, the geolocation action in this solution is not working, so I need to take a look at that. And then the final bit is caching. So we are, wherever possible, we are using a lot of caching in the solution. Right. So let's take a look at the code. So the code itself is part of the PnP ACES repository. So there's an ACE called as image card office location. There's a pending pull request, like David mentioned earlier, with some updates. So that will be merged soon. So in that ACE, we've got this adaptive card extension.ts file. And that file, what it does is it has a method called as load offices, which which has functionality in order to load the offices based on the data source. So what we do is we switch on the data source, and depending upon what has been selected, we either get the data source from the local properties, or from the term set, or from a list. So in this case, we've selected the data source as taxonomy. So let's have a look at how the terms from the terms set are being obtained. So there's a method called as get office terms. Now we are using PnP JS to call this. Let's see how we are doing that. So there's a file called as office location service. And that in that file, we are using PnP JS, in particular the extend factory method, in order to extend the term store and to define our own methods in order to, or our own functions in order to get the offices, or the in this case the terms. So there are some nice samples available with respect to PnP.js v3, which provide the same information. So what I've done is I've just used one of those samples and then changed the code slightly. Right. So we've got this function called as get office terms, and what we are doing here is with PnP.js we are saying firstly get the term set based on the term set ID, and then get all the terms under those, and in particular just get the ID and the labels and the properties of the terms. So once we have that information, we then use caching in order to store all this information in the browser cache. So once we have all the terms, these are nothing but all the 6 offices that we saw earlier, we just map all those terms into a custom object. So we get the the different properties, like the name of the term, which is the name of the office, the address, latitude and longitude, the time zone, who the manager is, and what the page is, etc. So basically, we get all those custom properties and then store them in a custom object. And then once we have got all the offices, what we do is, if there are no offices, we just say that we just display the error card. But if there are some offices, then what we do is we just add some extra properties, like the chat link for the manager, and then set some other properties like the time as null, and then whether the map and the whether we've gotten those or not. So initially we set them to null or false. We'll be changing these values later on. And then with all this, we then set the state of the adaptive card extension, in which we set all the offices. We also set something called as filtered offices, which we'll have a look at in a minute. And finally, we'll say the card view to render is the initial card view, which shows us the number of offices. Right. So just to tell you where we are now. So currently, we've got all the data related to the offices from the term store. It is now present in the state variable called as offices. And then the next steps are we have to display the number of offices, and each office needs to be displayed in the quick view in detail. Right. So there is a file called as card view. Again, ACES have got different cards. If you want to take a look at what are the different card views, there are a lot of sessions or a lot of videos available on YouTube from the calls. So we can take a look at those. So one of such views is the card view. So what we do here is we get the title from the properties, and then we calculate the number of offices using the length property, and then we just say we have how many number of offices. So in this case, we got 6 offices. So that's the information we display. Right. So that's the card view, which is very simple. And then when we click on view details, what happens is we open the quick view. So the quick view is nothing but an adaptive card JSON file. So as you can see on the left side over here, it is a simple adaptive card JSON showing all the properties that we have set in the offices. Now, I won't be going into the details of this JSON file because it's just, like I said, a simple JSON file with some text or some, buttons, etc., which shows all the different properties of the office. But we will take a look at how we are supplying data to this JSON file so that they get displayed. So it's nothing but this, the JSON, when it renders, it looks like that. So there is a corresponding file called as quickview.ts, which is highlighted on the right side. So that is a file wherein we set all the data. So firstly, we have this object called as quickview data, in which we need to set what office we are going to show, and whether we have to show the search or not, whether we have to show the weather or not, show the time or not, etc. So all this data is gathered into this object, and it is set initially with some values. And then what we do is, from the state, we get which office needs to be displayed. So there is an index that we set. So by default, that index will be 0. So it will show the first office from the offices array. And then what we do is, for each office, we call different methods. So whether if the map has to be shown, then we call a function, which we'll have a look at in a minute. If we need to show the time, then we call the function that shows the time. And finally, if we need to show the weather, we call a function that shows the weather. Once we have all that data, we again manipulate the data to return object with this extra information, and then that basically gets shown in the quick view. So in order to get the map, we have a method called as get office location map details. And as you can see over here, what we are doing is, based on the map source, if it is Bing or Google, we just call this URL, which gives us the static image for that particular location based on the latitude and longitude that is passed. And that's what you see over here in the quick view. And then for the time, like I said earlier, we've got two APIs. One is the Temporal API, which is slightly new. It'll be I think it'll be used quite heavily in the future, because there will be no need to use any third-party libraries basically with the help of Temporal. So it'll all be a part of the JavaScript engine that the process will run. So I think the proposal is still in the last phase, but it will be available soon. However, that's why they've given us a polyfill as of now. So that's what we are using here currently. So if we have to, in the ACE settings, if we say that the time needs to be obtained by temporal, then we just load that temporal polyfill, and then we get the current time, and then we get the offset to get the time difference. So how many hours or minutes the office time is ahead of or behind us. And then we do some computation to compose this nice string to say the local office is ahead of or behind so many hours, etc., and show that information. And that's what you see over here. In this case, Seattle is 8 hours behind London. And then finally, in order to show the weather, we use the OpenWeather Map API. This is a simple HTTP call. We pass the latitude and longitude, get the weather, and then put that in a custom object and show that. And that's what you see over here. And then in order to do the search, we use something called as fuse.js, in which we set the property initially, and then finally, whenever the user clicks the search button, we just call the fuse.search method, which then goes ahead and does the search in the office array. Right. So there are quite a few sessions from Patrick, from Waysand Waldeck, and from Paolo. You can take a look at those to get more information on ACES, and these are the resources that were used in today's demo. Thank you.
Great stuff. Really impressive demo. The way you linked all that stuff together. Nice, clean code and well-structured demo there with all the different code samples and showing the ACE as you're showing the code. Really impressive stuff.